Ever feel like you're missing some kind of secret code to understanding people?
Right.
Like what really makes them tick? What if I told you there's a way to unlock that code?
Intriguing.
Today, we're diving deep into Law 33 from Robert Greene's The 48 Laws of Power.
Oh, the 48 Laws of Power.
Discover each man's thumbscrew.
Ah, yes. A fascinating and potentially controversial one, but I think our listeners are ready for it.
Definitely. This law, well, it's not about manipulation, right?
Right.
It's about deeper understanding. It's like getting a key to unlock, like, insights into human behavior.
Exactly. And that can be incredibly valuable, in building relationships and navigating all the complexities of human interaction.
Absolutely. We're going to explore how knowing someone's thumbscrew can make you more persuasive.
Yeah.
And also help you kind of better predict their actions, right?
Yeah.
But before we get too far, what exactly is a thumbscrew in this context?
Well, it's not literal, of course. The thumbscrew, it's a metaphor for that one thing that's driving a person.
Yeah.
You know? Their ultimate weakness or their unshakable desire.
Yeah.
It could be a hidden insecurity, a burning ambition, a deep-seated fear.
Right.
Anything they'll move heaven and earth to either get or avoid.
It's almost like finding the key to their, like, internal control panel.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm guessing, like, understanding this control panel can be pretty powerful. Right?
Absolutely. Imagine someone you find difficult to understand.
Mhm.
Now imagine knowing their thumbscrew. Wouldn't that change how you approach them?
Oh, 100%.
How you communicate with them?
For sure. But how do we apply this in the real world? Can you give us an example of someone who kind of mastered this art of the thumbscrew?
Let's look at Cardinal Richelieu, the 17th century French statesman.
Oh, wow.
He was a master of using thumbscrews to exert control. Not through brute force, but by understanding and leveraging his rival's deepest desires and fears.
So he was using information almost like a weapon.
Yes, very much so. Richelieu's mastery, it lay in understanding that even seemingly trivial desires can be powerful leverage points.
Oh, interesting. Like what? Give me an example.
Well, like wanting a particular title,
Oh,
or social recognition, things that might seem insignificant to some, but were deeply important to others.
so he was like a 17th century spy master almost,
Yeah.
gathering intel and using it to influence people.
Exactly. He had this vast network of informants
Wow.
who helped him understand his rivals' ambitions, their secrets, their scandals. He then used this information strategically,
Right.
sometimes to manipulate, sometimes to outmaneuver, and in some cases to eliminate his opponents altogether.
Okay, that's both impressive and a little unsettling. But what kinds of thumbscrews are we talking about here?
Okay.
Like, give us some real world examples.
Well, the book outlines several common types, and you'll likely recognize people who fit these descriptions.
Okay.
Let's start with vanity. We all know someone who thrives on praise and recognition.
Oh, I know plenty. My social media feeds are full of them. I once saw someone.
Well, imagine how understanding that desire for admiration, right,
Yeah.
could be used to influence their decisions or actions.
Okay, I'm starting to see the potential here.
Yeah.
What else?
Then you have insecurity, which is like the flip side of vanity.
Uh-huh.
These are people driven by a fear of failure or rejection. They might constantly seek reassurance or downplay their accomplishments.
That one hits close to home for a lot of us, I'm sure.
Right.
So how would someone leverage that type of thumbscrew?
Well, imagine you understand their anxieties
Right.
and you frame your requests in a way that alleviates their fears. You're not trying to exploit their weakness, but you're being sensitive to it.
It's about knowing what makes them tick
Mm.
and using that knowledge to kind of like create a more receptive environment.
Exactly.
This is fascinating. Okay, what other thumbscrews should we be aware of?
Well, love and attachment are powerful motivators. People will go to great lengths to protect those they care about.
Right.
But this is a dangerous one to exploit as it
Right.
crosses an ethical boundary. Then there's greed, a classic motivator.
Yeah.
This can manifest as a desire for, wealth, status, or power, anything someone perceives as valuable.
That makes sense.
Hmm.
What about the last type of thumbscrew?
It's past trauma. Unresolved wounds, they can significantly shape a person's decisions and make their actions more predictable. However, it's crucial to emphasize that this knowledge should be used for understanding, not for manipulation or control.
I completely agree. It's about empathy, not exploitation.
Yeah.
So let's move on to some modern examples. How about someone like Vladimir Putin?
Okay.
How does he use this thumbscrew concept?
He's a fascinating example. He understands that many Western leaders are deeply averse to conflict.
Mhm.
They fear, economic consequences and
Yeah.
potential escalation. He knew, for example, that Germany relied heavily on Russian gas, so he leveraged that fear of economic disruption to delay sanctions.
So he plays on their fear of conflict to achieve his objectives. But wouldn't some leaders see that as a sign of weakness?
Hmm.
How does he manage to pull that off?
He pushes boundaries, makes calculated risks, and exploits those hesitations to his advantage. It's not about endorsing his tactics, but understanding the power dynamics at play.
Right.
He recognizes his opponent's thumbscrews and utilizes them strategically.
That's a really interesting point. It's about recognizing that knowledge is power,
Yeah.
even when we don't agree with how it's used. Okay, I need another example. My brain is buzzing with all these possibilities.
Okay. Let's talk about J. Edgar Hoover, the former FBI director. He maintained his grip on power by amassing compromising information on practically everyone.
Seriously.
From politicians to celebrities, even presidents.
He knew everyone's secrets.
It seemed that way.
But wouldn't that strategy backfire? Wouldn't constantly gathering dirt on people create more enemies than allies? Was there a limit to how far Hoover could push this?
He understood that even the most powerful figures have something to hide, and he wielded that knowledge expertly.
Yeah.
It's a stark reminder of how information can be both a powerful tool and a dangerous weapon.
That's mind-blowing.
Uh-huh.
It really highlights how understanding someone's thumbscrew, even if it's something they want to keep hidden, can give you a significant advantage. But how do we actually find someone's thumbscrew in the real world? Sounds like some serious detective work.
Okay, we've talked about the power of knowing someone's thumbscrew, but how do we actually go about finding it? Do we need to become private investigators or something?
Uh-huh. Not quite that intense,
Yeah.
but it does require, careful observation and subtle questioning. People, they often reveal their thumbscrews unconsciously through their reactions, their word choices, even their body language.
So it's more about being like a perceptive listener than a master spy. Exactly. Pay attention to what gets them fired up, right?
Yeah.
What topics make their eyes light up? What triggers a defensive or dismissive reaction? Those strong emotional responses, they often point to deeply held beliefs and values, which can be clues to their thumbscrews.
That makes sense. We've all seen someone completely change when a specific topic comes up.
Right.
Like a switch flips.
Precisely. And listen closely to how they talk about themselves and others. Do they constantly name drop?
Oh,
Or are
yeah.
they always trying to one-up everyone else's stories? Those patterns, they can reveal a lot about their insecurities and desires.
Okay, I'm seeing how this works.
Yeah.
So we're observing their emotional cues, listening to their conversations. What about asking questions? Like, how do we do that without sounding like we're interrogating them?
Subtlety is key. Instead of directly probing their weaknesses, try to guide the conversation towards their past experiences, their aspirations, their anxieties. Asking open-ended questions about those topics, it can encourage them to open up and reveal their vulnerabilities without feeling pressured.
So we're not like trying to corner them or put them on the spot. We're just kind of creating a space where they feel comfortable sharing.
Exactly. And as they share, you'll start to notice recurring themes, patterns in their thinking, and areas where they seem particularly sensitive or passionate. Those are often strong indicators of their thumbscrew.
It's like learning a whole new language.
Yeah.
The language of human motivation.
Yeah.
And as we become more fluent, we can better understand the people around us and build stronger connections.
That's a great way to put it. But let's remember that the goal is to use this knowledge ethically. We're not trying to manipulate people
Right.
or take advantage of their vulnerabilities.
Right. That's a crucial point. So how do we walk that line between understanding and manipulation?
Think of it this way. Knowing someone's thumbscrew doesn't give you permission to exploit it. It's about being more sensitive to their needs, communicating more effectively, and building relationships based on genuine understanding and respect.
I love that. It's about empowering ourselves to connect with people on a deeper level, not taking advantage of their weaknesses. So what are some ethical ways we can actually use this knowledge?
Well, one powerful application is in persuasion. Imagine you're trying to convince someone to support your idea.
Hmm.
If you understand their underlying motivations, you can frame your arguments in a way that resonates with their values and desires.
So instead of trying to force our views on them, we're finding common ground and appealing to what matters most to them.
Exactly. You're creating a win-win scenario where both parties feel heard and understood. And this principle can also be applied to conflict resolution.
Yeah.
When you understand the fears and insecurities driving someone's behavior during a disagreement, you can approach the situation with more empathy and compassion.
That makes so much sense. Instead of just seeing them as an opponent, we can try to understand like why they're reacting the way they are and find a solution that addresses everyone's concerns.
It's about building bridges instead of walls. And this principle is incredibly valuable in leadership.
Okay.
Effective leaders, they understand how to motivate their team members by tapping into their individual strengths and aspirations.
So instead of using thumbscrews to like control people, they're using this knowledge to inspire and empower them.
Precisely. It's about creating an environment where everyone feels valued and supported, which ultimately leads to better performance and greater satisfaction. And of course, this applies to our personal relationships as well.
Okay, I'm thinking how this applies to pretty much every aspect of our lives. It's amazing how this one concept can have such far-reaching implications. It's like we've been given a new set of lenses through which to view the world.
It's definitely a perspective shift. But before we get too carried away, there's one crucial point we haven't addressed yet.
Ooh, suspense.
Yeah.
I'm intrigued. What haven't we covered?
We've talked extensively about understanding other people's thumbscrews, but what about our own?
Whoa, mind blown. I hadn't even thought about that.
Yeah. It's just as important, if not more so, to be aware of our own motivations and vulnerabilities.
Okay, so how do we do that? How do we uncover our own thumbscrews?
Self-reflection is key. Ask yourself, what triggers strong emotions in you? What are your deepest fears and insecurities? What are you most driven to achieve? It can be uncomfortable, but facing those questions honestly is essential for personal growth.
I can see how that could be challenging, but also incredibly valuable.
Yeah.
Are there any other strategies we can use?
Don't underestimate the power of feedback from people you trust.
Mm.
Sometimes we need an outside perspective to see ourselves more clearly. Ask your close friends or family members what they perceive as your strengths and weaknesses, your motivations and anxieties. Their insights can be incredibly illuminating.
That's a great point. It's easy to get stuck in our own heads and miss things that are obvious to others. So we're observing our own reactions, seeking feedback from trusted sources. What else can we do to uncover our own thumbscrews?
Be open to learning and growing. Embrace self-awareness as an ongoing journey.
Right.
The more we understand ourselves, the better equipped we'll be to navigate the complexities of life and build meaningful connections with others.
Okay. I'm officially adding discover my own thumbscrew to my to-do list. This whole conversation has been a real game changer for me. It's like we've unlocked a secret code to understanding human behavior, both in ourselves and in others.
It's a powerful framework for understanding human motivation, isn't it? And remember, we've only scratched the surface. There's so much more to explore in the 40 Laws of Power and in the realm of human psychology.
I'm definitely adding that book to my reading list. This has
Yeah.
been an incredible deep dive. Thank you so much for sharing your insights.
It's been my pleasure. We've covered a lot of ground today, but remember, this is just the beginning of your exploration.
Well, sadly, that's all the time we have for today. Welcome back to the deep dive.
Mhm.
We've been exploring this idea of discover each man's thumbscrew, Law 33 from the 48 Laws of Power.
Right, yeah. We've uncovered some pretty fascinating insights about how understanding people's deepest motivations, can be used for influence.
Yeah.
From historical figures like Cardinal Richelieu and J. Edgar Hoover
Right.
to modern day leaders like Vladimir Putin.
We've also talked about the ethical implications of this knowledge,
Yeah.
emphasizing the importance of, using it responsibly
Right.
and with respect for others.
Because ultimately no one wants to feel like they're being manipulated.
Exactly. Before we wrap up, I want to revisit something you mentioned earlier, how thumbscrews are kind of constantly being used in our daily lives, often without us even realizing it.
Yeah. It's easy to think of power and manipulation as something that only happens in, like politics or high stakes business deals.
Right.
But these dynamics, they're at play in all our interactions, even the seemingly mundane ones.
Okay, I'm all ears.
Yeah.
Give us some examples. Where do these thumb screws kind of pop up in our everyday lives?
Think about the last time you saw a commercial for a new car.
Right.
What were they really selling? Was it just transportation?
Right?
Or was it a feeling of freedom, status,
Well,
adventure?
ooh, I see what you're getting at. They're appealing to our desires,
Mm-hmm.
our aspirations, even our insecurities maybe, not just selling a product.
Exactly. They're tapping into our thumb screws, whether it's the desire for a better life, the fear of missing out, the need for belonging. They understand that emotions drive decisions,
Yeah.
and they leverage those emotions masterfully.
It's almost like they've hacked our brains.
Hmm.
So it's not just about being aware of other people's thumb screws, it's about understanding how our own are being targeted.
Absolutely. Developing that awareness is crucial in today's world, where we're bombarded with messages designed to trigger our emotions
Yeah.
and influence our choices.
Okay, so how do we protect ourselves? It feels like we're like constantly being targeted.
Awareness is the first step.
Yeah.
Once you start recognizing these tactics, you can take back control. Ask yourself, what emotions is this message trying to evoke?
Right.
What need or desire is it playing on? Is this something I genuinely want, or am I being manipulated?
So it's about cultivating a healthy skepticism
Mm-hmm.
and not taking everything at face value.
Precisely. Think about social media.
Yeah.
Why do we spend hours scrolling through perfectly curated feeds? What void are we trying to fill? The need for validation, connection,
Right.
a sense of belonging.
It's so easy to like get caught up in comparing ourselves to others,
Yeah.
especially online. It can really mess with your self-esteem.
And that's where understanding thumb screws can be so empowering, by recognizing that these platforms are designed to exploit our insecurities.
Yeah.
And keep us engaged. We can make more conscious choices about how we use them
Right.
and how we let them influence us.
This has been such an eye-opening conversation. It's like I'm seeing the world in a whole new light.
That's the power of knowledge. And remember, this is just the tip of the iceberg. There's so much more to explore in the 48 Laws of Power.
Right.
And the realm of human psychology in general.
I'm definitely adding that book to my reading list.
Cool.
But for now, we have to wrap things up. Any final words of wisdom for our listeners?
Now that you know about thumb screws, start paying attention. Observe the people in your life. Pay attention to their reactions, their words, their motivations. You'll be amazed at what you discover.
It's like a real-life treasure hunt.
Exactly. But remember, the most important discovery you'll make is understanding your own thumb screws. What drives you? What are your deepest fears and desires? The more you understand these forces, the more empowered you'll be to navigate the world and create the life you want.
That's a perfect note to end on. Thank you for this incredible deep dive. It's been a real pleasure learning from you.
The pleasure was all mine. Until next time, keep observing, keep learning, and keep diving deep.
And to all our listeners, thanks for joining us on the deep dive. We'll see you next time for another fascinating exploration.